Today we hit the 100th day of the Trump administration, that magical milepost that the media has seized upon for generations as an indicator of how any new administration is doing. And today, President Trump returns to Pennsylvania, whose 20 electoral votes put him over the top on November the 8th, making him the next president of the United States. It's been a sometimes rocky start for this administration, a different kind of administration in every way, and one that the media has certainly not done any favors for. There are some studies that show that 90% of the stories written about the Trump administration during its first 3 months in office have been negative. That certainly wasn't the case 8 years ago for Barack Obama, whom the media, having invested heavily in his campaign, fawned all over. So let's take a look at what has actually occurred over these first 100 days and what we can look for in the next 100. First of all, Donald Trump himself set the expectation bar at a really unrealistic level, telling folks during the campaign that during the first 100 days they would have this incredibly ambitious agenda all laid out and done end to end, and that it would be, quote unquote, so easy. John F. Kennedy, in the infancy of his presidency, said, "Here's my agenda. It won't get accomplished in the first 100 days. It won't get accomplished in the first 1,000 days. It may not even get accomplished in my entire administration, but let's get to work." He underpromised and overperformed, something that any business knows you want to do. Underpromise, but overdeliver. And that, I think, has been one of the things that's been a challenge for the Trump administration so far. But they have not been without their successes. Neil Gorsuch being first and foremost among them, the first Supreme Court justice, by the way, named during the first 100 days in a very, very long time. But on the legislative side, where things have not gone so well, there's still plenty of time. Much of what President Trump has done thus far has been by executive action. It's now time for legislative action. And does it really matter to most folks whether it gets done on day 121 or even 151 or 201? Looking in the rearview mirror, it won't. Where the administration has faltered thus far was on the repeal and replacement of Obamacare. But it now looks like there are going to be votes put together on the Republican side to do that. Additionally, President Trump this week announced his plans for tax reform, a huge piece to get the economy going again. The 1.9 rate of growth that we've experienced under the Obama administration many times really doesn't cut it for anybody. That's a stagnant economy. And the two words that I've said from the beginning have to mark this administration: economic growth will be really put forward by the tax policies that President Trump is now coming up with, reducing the brackets from 7 to 3 and reducing the marginal rates significantly and doing away with a lot of the deductions, each and every one of which is put into place for one specific reason, and that is to protect against high marginal rates of taxation. When you get those out of the way and when you bring corporate taxes down to where we're competitive with the rest of the world, the economic engines of a free society are put in motion, and that's good for everybody. As John F. Kennedy once observed, a rising tide truly does lift all boats. So there's plenty of time yet. I think the next 100 days will be very interesting, and perhaps the first 1,000 days will be where a lot is accomplished. But remember that tax policy is ultimately, if you tax something, you get less of it. And what Donald Trump is now saying is, let's make America competitive again with the rest of the world with a tax policy that promotes economic growth. That's good for everybody, and that will be the best 60 seconds or 60-ish seconds of your week.